welcome, students, as we prepare for another episode of DC Graduates. I'm one of your hosts here, Dr. Recommended Dose of Nerdiness, aka your nerd today, Carlos Rodriguez. And as always, I'm joined by my fellow teacher, Sly. Sly, how are you?
Like I said to you 5 seconds before you hit record, my tummy hurts. And I just want to go on a quick tangent. This is
Yeah.
the beauty and joy of living in like a real city that people who did not grow up in the middle of nowhere will not understand. But like last night I had a random craving at like almost 11 p.m. and that was like half baked. I didn't even know what I really wanted. And
Mm.
I could find something that sounds good and have it show up magically at my house. And then I ate really spicy cabbage dish at like midnight.
Or like kimchi?
And yeah. No, it was like a dry pot
Mm.
cabbage something.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I really wanted cabbage and it was delicious. But now my stomach is reminding me that while I enjoy the initial process of eating spicy food, if I do it on an empty stomach, then my body's gonna hate me for a
Yeah.
day. But
Then
it's
there's
fine. I'm
issues.
here. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk to you about yet another anthology, the first of many this season,
God, so
the
many.
second of many.
Yeah. Yeah, so many though. So many anthologies this season, of course. We are talking about 2011's Green Lantern Emerald Knights, which coincided with the release of the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie. One of them is good. I'll let you decide which one. I mean, there's a reason why this podcast is animated only.
Very true.
Yeah. Uh but I let's go into host history real quick cuz I
Hmm.
forgot how much I love this movie. And I thought last week's was pretty
Yeah.
good. I came around positive on first flag because I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like it again. I really loved Emerald Knights. I love it. There's only few issues I'll have. We'll get into it when we get to the episode proper. But honestly, I think it really knocked it out of the park. Animation was solid. You didn't have like the jarring effect of like different anime studios like coming in and pulling an animatrix or like a Halo
Mhm.
or Batman Gotham Knight. Um, where there's different studios and like the art style varies. I mean, some sections are really cool looking, some are really
Fun.
rough.
Yeah.
Don't match really well. But this had an overall look, a feel. It had a premise, like it felt
Yeah,
cohesive.
I had a like through line
Mm-hmm.
story wise that felt really important to
Yeah,
each of the um vignettes that we saw. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because a couple weeks ago, you were talking about the two Green Lantern movies we were covering back to back, and I thought you remembered that you liked one and didn't like the other. So it's cool to see
yeah.
you enjoyed both of them on revisit.
Yeah, it definitely came around. I mean, there's like little issues with both of them, of course, and I know
Yeah.
overall, now in the year 2024, as we're recording, like DC's getting less gun shy when it comes to Green Lantern in media. Whether it be again the Lanterns TV show that James Gunn is going to be producing in his new DC line, the fact that Guy Gardner is going to be in a Superman movie. Um, and not even like they're getting away from the stigma of what happened with Ryan Reynolds and poor Ryan Reynolds. I feel like depending on some
Yeah.
DC fanboys think he's the problem with that movie. Other people think like the movie itself is a problem from jump. But that
Self
definitely
is
left
the
a
problem. I think we can agree on
yeah,
that.
that definitely left a bad stain. Whether you're a Green Lantern fan, as I am, because I
Mhm.
got the tattoo,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
or just in general DC fan, that just left such a stinker that like everyone's like, I
Mhm.
don't want to touch Green Lantern shit for a long time. We really have not, other than like Justice League stuff. He's used
Mhm.
sparingly, and it's always usually Hal. You know, I
Mhm.
don't think we
Mhm.
see a proper Green Lantern movie until after the aughts. In our timeline, I
Mhm.
think he'll be in the Tomorrowverse. I think is the next time we get a solo Green Lantern movie. And
Yeah.
smartly they choose John, as they should, a more interesting
Yeah.
Green Lantern. Um,
I do love John.
He's amazing. So I can't wait to watch that movie when we get down to it. But
Mhm.
Sly, what's your history with this movie? Did you ever see it before this recording?
Never seen it. I watched it earlier today. And yeah, it was really interesting. I had kind of forgot it was an anthology, which um worked out to my benefit. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But as we went through, it was really interesting to see how they wove the like overarching narrative throughout all of the stories they chose to adapt, and how they linked that to um the movie they were showing. It was really interesting because like it felt like in the same universe, kind of adjacent to the movie we watched last week, but they also obviously made some pretty significant changes to like the timeline and the
Mm-hmm.
canon. So it was cool to have something that stylistically and I don't know, just like was reminiscent of a universe we were already familiar with,
Yeah.
but with slight tweaks to it to keep it
Mm-hmm.
fresh.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, they obviously used again a lot of the same animation that we saw in First Flight, which is a little jarring when watching the movies back to back like we did. When
Hmm.
you don't have that gap of a couple of years to remember. Um, so that is a little jarring because you're like, oh, what? Sinestro's here. And you're like, well, last time I saw him, he was a bad guy. And wait,
Yeah.
why is Arissa the rookie? That doesn't make sense. She was already a Green Lantern when Hal joined. Like there's like little things like that, but and I think Boudica's in there as well. And it was like, wait, she's a bad guy too. What do you mean? Like last time we saw her. But I think it
Yeah.
was quickly like establishing itself as like something separate, canon wise to its own thing, kind of give you some
Mhm.
stories. I thought it was really interesting. We are going to get into who directed it because there's a few directors we have on here. So as we mentioned, it is an anthology, so it's broken up to pieces. So we have a few different directors. We have Christopher Berkeley, who directed the First Lander story and Abin Sur story. Lauren Montgomery, who directed the Kilowog and overall Emerald Knight story, which is like
Oh,
the
that was
overall
one of the anthologies, I
the
believe.
Emerald Knight was
Was
that?
there six? There it was broken up into six separate credits.
Mm. I think the Emerald Knights is technically
So
the overall
the
story, as they were
overarching. Okay, okay.
Crota. And then Jay Olivia for the Mogo section, which I can't wait to talk about, and the Elira section. Written by, this is fun, Michael Green and Mark Guggenheim, who I believe worked they worked on the first Lantern section of this movie, but they also, I believe, have writing credits. Guggenheim kind of launched the Arrowverse pretty much. Like he was showrunner for Arrow, helped launch Supergirl. He was a showrunner on that for a while, and then like Legends of Tomorrow, and so far and so far, your Gotham Knights, your beloved Gotham Knights. I think he at least was
I
producer
like
at
how it's
that point.
mine.
It's
I'll
yours.
claim it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's mine now. Yeah, no, you're right. There was five anthologies and then the overarching
Gotcha,
story.
gotcha, gotcha. And then yeah, Michael Green, I believe, worked on I believe maybe Mark Guggenheim as well worked on the script of the actual movie. So there's a through line at least there. I believe they wrote the script that Ryan Reynolds started for that. Then we have Peter Tomasi, who wrote Kilowog, and around this time, this is a fun, interesting thing because I didn't know he wrote part of this anthology. He also worked on there was a couple Green Lantern comic books at the time. One that focused on Hal, what was going on in his world specifically, and then another one that was called Green Lantern Corps. It revolved every once in a while, but the main through line was kind of Kyle Rayner, my favorite, and Guy Gardner as these quote unquote honor guard Green Lanterns, where they're
Mm-hmm.
stationed on Oa. They're like on a higher tier than the other Green Lanterns because of all the shit that they've dealt with. And Tomasi was main writer on that for a long time, and he was great. His run is really great on that. But he wrote the Kilowog story in this, which is also fabulous. We have Dave Gibbons,
Oh yeah.
who is credited for the Mogo story. This is interesting because he also came up with this with Alan Moore. His Mogo story is actually based on an Alan Moore story because there used to be the Tales of the Green Lantern, like little anthology book that you would get back in the
Mm-hmm.
70s and 80s. And then you have Jeff Johns, who is very divisive among DC fans. I love his writing style, but we can't talk about him in a positive light without mentioning all the stuff that the Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg, went through with him. Being dismissed of all the shit that Joss Whedon put him. Fuck Joss Whedon as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then we have he wrote the Abin Sur part, and then Alan Burnett, Todd Casey, and Jeff Johns worked on Emerald Knights together, and then Eddie Berganza for the Lyra section. He's done a bunch of stuff. He does like a bunch of, you can see his credits on like I think Avatar and a bunch of animated things that we talk about all the time. Animation studio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
um just the overarching story got credited really weirdly. So I believe it was Alan Burnett and Todd Casey did the story by, and then Alan Burnett and Jeff Johns did the screenplay, or vice versa.
Oh, okay.
I didn't actually write it down because it was confusing.
It's funny to
Okay,
think
yeah.
of.
Story by was Jeff Johns and Alan Burnett, and then screenplay was Todd Casey and Alan Burnett.
Honestly, that would make sense because at this point, Jeff Johns in 2011 is like high man on the totem pole within DC Comics. He's like writing all the initiatives, rebooting the universe, doing the new 52 around this time. Like, get ready to start that. I think we are just finishing up like his Final Crisis storylines, and bringing Barry Allen back, bringing Hal Jordan back. He's on that kind of run, and
Mm-hmm.
he's working on Superman and things like that. So him writing probably the Abin Sur section and then being like, all right, I'll do a little story for the overall Knights probably makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at first seeing his credit as written by, when it comes to like live action media, it's always like, oh my god, that's so weird because like they don't typically use comic book writers in
Mm-hmm.
live action or animated properties, even though they should, because that's their fucking
Yeah.
job all the fucking time. Every month, like we get a new book from these motherfuckers, and like for whatever reason they decide not to do it. Now it's starting to get better. Obviously, we got, as I mentioned, James Gunn rebooting the DC universe, and Tom King, who's worked on a bunch of stuff on DC. Love or hate him, you know, I like him. I like him a lot. um, he's working on the Lanterns TV show. Funny enough, he's one of the writers on that. So he is like dipping his toe into like actual, entertainment stuff outside of comic books. But Jeff Johns actually cut his teeth in Hollywood under Richard Donner. He loved the Superman movies, came out to Hollywood, and started an apprenticeship under Donner. So he grew up like in that Hollywood system with Donner. And then when he actually got work for writing comic books and stuff, Jeff brought Richard Donner in to write a whole story
Huh,
about General Zod, which is like the most famous villain he used in his Superman movies back in the day. So it's a little fun little fact.
that's
Jeff Johns
awesome.
not weird when you see his name for actual movies. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not a nice person. It seems like, which
No.
is a shame. It's a damn shame.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's we can acknowledge that we can enjoy stories by
yeah,
people and
yeah,
not
not
enjoy
as
them
bad
as
as
humans.
Joss Whedon, but still,
Yeah. So
culpable of what he
kind of
did.
a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as always, the studios is WB Animation, but you put here main title design and animation, what it is studio. So that's pretty cool. They did. I like the main title design. I thought it was pretty good. And then we have
Ever since we had, I don't even remember what episode it was, but there was one episode where I was like, oh, there was other studios here. I've been like made sure to check every single time, and it hasn't come back up until now. So
finally justice. So we have here stars Nathan Fillion, Jason Isaacs, Elizabeth Moss, Henry Rollins, Greg Griffin, Kelly Hu, Andrea Romano, and Bruce Tim per usual. Sly, where is it streaming?
great question. I'd love to know. From what I could find, it's not.
No. The websites are getting better though about finding them. Like
Mm-hmm.
and especially a
Yeah.
movie this old. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we totally legally watched this.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
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 Yep.
Yep. Uh, next, Sly, hit us with that plot recap.
A friend of the show,
Yeah.
reoccurring character. Um, But for our plot today, we got on Oa, the headquarters planet of the intergalactic police force, the Green Lantern Corps. The Guardians of the Universe see alarming evidence that the feared villain, Krona, has coming to destroy the planet. While the Guardians move to evacuate, Green Lantern Hal Jordan helps the unsure new recruit, Ursa, by telling her several stories of fellow Lanterns and the challenges they face. Through him, we see the adventures of Avra the First Lantern, Princess Lyra, Kilowog, the unsociable Mogo, and Jordan's immediate predecessor, Abin Sur. When Krona arrives, those stories prove more valuable than anyone expects, as Larissa draws a special inspiration from them. Thank you, Kenneth Chisholm.
Thank
Friend
you,
of the
Kenneth.
show. We're besties now.
Yeah, he's
I don't know if you know this, Kenneth.
the third chair in this podcast, the invisible third chair.
Basically.
All right.
Yeah, Kenneth, unfortunately, you will not see this in time to add a plot recap for Superman Doomsday. Spoiler alert. But I wish you were. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss it when Kenneth is involved in our podcast. I wonder if we email him if it still works,
But we should.
right?
Yeah.
But like, hey, I know you
I'll
don't
try
know
that.
us, yeah, but we shout you out every episode. All right, Sly, hit us with the comic book characters.
Oh, great. I know how to say these words. Uh, we've got Arissa Kilowog with two L's. I'm pretty sure there's only one L. I did have to look it up every time. Anyways,
I was
uh,
under duress when I was writing it.
all right. Sinestro, Avencer.
Atrocitus.
I don't remember this one. Uh, say it again.
Atrocitus.
Atrocitus. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Hal Jordan, obviously, the Guardians of the Universe, Krona, and Mogo, the Unsociable.
Yes. So before we get into the episode proper, I feel like it might be a short one this episode, but because it's just so good,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just we're gonna just
Yeah.
quickly talk about stuff. This is our second anthology, and for the Andrea
Mm-hmm.
Romano roundup, I wanted to bring up what makes a good anthology. Sly,
Mm-hmm.
what's a good anthology?
Great
What makes
question.
it good?
I like having a thematic link.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to have something that grounds each vignette within an anthology. I think having a really strong common voice throughout the whole makes it feel like a more well-rounded project. Um so yeah, I think having multiple different perspectives but with a consistent tone or voice really helps engage a bunch of different people in a way that still feels cohesive. I think what doesn't make a good anthology is if the pieces feel too disconnected or if it feels like even if the like a specific part of the story, a specific vignette is not targeted at me, that I completely lose interest. I think you have to be able to really cater to multiple perspectives throughout each section while still retaining the whole of your audience. Um and yeah, I think honestly this is a pretty great example of an anthology. I love a frame story. Um so I love that we had this setting that we're following. We get a very like oral history,
Mm.
vibe. We've seen the way like the lanterns like storytelling is documented in a couple different ways throughout these past weeks. We see the book itself, we see them diving into like memories. But I really enjoyed this kind of like oral like storytelling like narrative that we got throughout this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
So for me, anthologies are funny because like this is a very well done anthology, I think. And my only touchstone for a lot of anthologies, and that's kind of when I want to bring it up because there's so many that do it good in the horror space. My favorite horror movie of all time is a movie called Trick or Treat. It takes place in Halloween in like this like kind of not country-esque, but like it was like I think it's outside of New York, little suburban place that like loves Halloween, goes crazy for it, and we that movie starts at the end, and then you don't realize
Mm-hmm.
until you get to the end that that was the end that you were watching the whole time, but they have like 4 or 5 interconnected stories. I always forget, with one through line being this beautiful character named Sam, who I love so much, the spirit of Halloween himself incarnate. He's always at every scene. He's like that thematic piece that kind of connects everything together. And then it's cool to see, later on, you see like, oh, those are the 2 people who died in the beginning. Well, I just saw them like earlier in the night when they're first drinking out, and getting drunk, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's like, oh, that's how we got here and all this stuff. That's fun. And when you have an overall theme to it, I think it really works. Another one that I wanted to shout out that came to mind because I just seen the most recent one was VHS, which is a
Mm.
anthology series. I believe they're on their 7th movie now. Alana Pierce, shout out to her, just starred in the most recent one, which was really good. Um, and those do a pretty good job of having like a wraparound piece that kind of fits everything together. It's like always, obviously, oh, why are we here? Oh, where is this random movie? They pop it in, and then that's like one of the
Mm-hmm.
anthologies we see. I always like that for the first couple, and then now it's like more thematic. Like it's more like a tone piece
Mm-hmm.
throughout all of it that kind of fits everything together, which is nice. But when I think, because I love that narrative feel, and when it's done right, really works. Pardon me. That when we got to Gotham Knights, it felt really disjointed. And it wasn't just
Mm-hmm.
the animation
Yeah.
style. Obviously, like I kind of alluded to that. I think all the animations kind of hit for the most part.
Yeah, they
Um,
were all interesting and different in a way
mhm,
that if they had a little bit of a more consistent like narrative voice, I think would have been really strong. But the problem was like the animation was disjointed and the
mhm.
storytelling was disjointed. And I think you can have one or the other, but not both.
Yeah, because with Gotham Knight, though we came up, fairly positive, because of like the
Yeah.
animation style and like the voice work that was done. I think the thing that brought it down the most is like we didn't realize they were connected until way into the third one. And you're like, wait, these characters are
Yeah.
coming back. Like, wait, what do you
Uh-huh.
mean? You're referencing shit that happened that we just saw, but like it's not really well done, I guess you would say. Here, it's constantly
Mhm.
you have this through line of, hey, Chrono's coming back, major threat. Hey, Arissa, you're a new Lantern. Don't be too scared. Hal's like, I'm supposed to teach you. How about to calm you down? I'll tell you a story, and then someone else will tell you a story, and like, oh, who's that? Well, let me tell you her story, and then, as Kenneth mentioned in the pot recap, it all comes together for a lesson that
Mhm.
Arissa comes and she makes her own story, which was a
Yeah.
cool moment in this movie. Um, and then we get some really cool side stories of because the Lantern Corps, obviously, at this point hasn't been to the point where how many members we have, right? So it's the traditional 3,600 lanterns within the universe. I mean, at this point, I think we're 7,200. I think they double them up. I think at some point in the comics. So we're not there yet, but
That's
there's
nice.
so many interesting characters that they set up, and as I mentioned when we're talking about the writers of the piece, Peter Tomasi, was one who was tasked with by DC when writing the comics to explore the more vast, the more space bound Green Lantern stories. So we'll
Mhm.
have like 12 months at the time when Peter Tomasi was writing of, Kyle and Guy being the honor guards and like, oh, who's this Daxamite? If you know DC characters, you know who the Daxamites are. Oh, now he's this like uber strong, Green Lantern. Oh, because we're near Yellow Sun. Now he's like Superman with a Green Lantern ring.
Mhm.
What's this? What's that? What's the Spider Guild? Let's go into all the weird shit. While on the other side, you have Jeff Johns working on and setting up like the more, quote unquote important stories and stuff that's going to affect all of DC continuity in general, like the Sinestro Corps War, focusing on Hal Jordan,
Mhm.
what his life is, post resurrection, all this stuff like that, and what is Earth's situation with the Lanterns doing. But Peter was definitely tasked with setting up new characters, setting up all this stuff. So there's so many interesting things that you get, and there's 2 stories in this that get adapted and kind of adapted to fit within this narrative that we get in this movie. But the Mogo story and the story with Abin Sur and Sinestro are two that I
Mm-hmm.
believe were worked on both by Alan Moore originally. Again, as I mentioned, there was a Tales of the Green Lantern, I think, comic serial back in the
I
day.
can. They're all credited in here. If you give me a second, I can
Well,
find
Alan
it.
Moore always takes his name off of everything because he literally absolutely despises anything that's adapted from his work. So
Yeah,
whether it's good
Alan
or
Moore
not.
was credited with based on Moga Doesn't Socialize and Tigers, and
Yeah,
segments Moga Doesn't Socialize and Abinser.
yeah. So they are adaptations, and it's cool because in like let's touch upon real quick Abinsur's whole thing about Destiny and thinking about Sinestro and Sinestro talking to Arissa
Hmm.
post their first fight with these Sun Eaters. That storyline, it takes place in a lot of same similar things that happen, right? Planet Yzmont, they set up, this is like this penal planet that like the worst of the worst go there, and this guy escaped and all this stuff, and they did the smart thing now that you have in 2011 that we know canon wise within the DC universe, Atrocitus is from there, you know. So instead of having the villain that we had in Alan Moore's book, why don't we adapt it to be more modern and like, all right, Atrocitus is here. He's gonna be a big player. Whether we do more stories in the style, which spoilers they don't.
Hmm.
Let's
But
reward the
theoretically,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. Let's reward the fact that people like Carlos are read the comics, are obsessed with the comics, know who the Lantern Corps are. You know, back in the day, knew their oath by heart. Used to have rings for them and stuff. And so let's reward someone like that and be like, hey, look, Atrocitus. He's a new character, fairly new, but like, yeah, he's from Ismail. He, hates the Green Lanterns. This fits a little more now with this new canon to what we have, and it's really well done. It doesn't take anything away from Alan Moore's original story, and I think you
Hmm.
still get the, all the thematic things that you would before while reading. You get like that brothership, with Sinestro and Admin Sir. You get like how they kind of butt heads, like they are fundamentally different. You get to
It
see a
was
lighter
really
side.
interesting, especially the Abinser section,
Mhm.
getting to see that right after the previous
Yeah.
movie. Because I'm like, oh, I know where this character is going, and like everything you're saying is true, comma. However, that's
Exactly.
not the universe we're currently existing in, and what does that mean for their relationship? And it was kind of really cool, like you said, to see that brotherhood and how they had this, tension, but
Hmm.
so much love and care for each other, and what it means that, like, looking back, like, it wasn't until after Abinser had died that we get to see like
Hmm.
Sinestro being like full on Sinestro.
Yeah, like Sinestro, almost for the most part, is like a good villain. You kind of
Hmm.
understand where he comes from for a lot of this stuff. Like I mentioned in my notes, like if you're not a comic book fan or you don't know much about Sinestro, this is a really good introduction to Sinestro compared to what we saw in First Light. First Light just straight up, while Alfred Molina does a
Yeah.
great role from jump, is like, yo, he's the bad guy. He's just he literally is sinister. Like that's his name. That's it. This is like, yeah, this dude has like a villain mustache. His name's Sinestro. He's pretty chill. He's pretty chill dude. He's just like a kind of hard ass.
Yeah.
Um, and you get, yeah, again, you see that love he has for Abin Sur. He in the comics falls in love with Abin's uh sister. That's how close they are. That
Yeah.
he goes over to his family. He hangs out with his family. He doesn't have a family on I forget the name of his planet, but he lost his family. He makes a new family with Abin Sur, and has a wife, has a child with his with Abin's sister, and that's how close they are. That they then become actual brothers, through marriage. Um, and Abin's death
Whoever
hits him.
just love your homie so much you marry the like
Yeah.
socially socially acceptable version of that person and
Yeah,
make a family with them.
exactly. It's like, you know what I would love to do? Fuck my best friend. But you know what I can't do?
Yeah.
Fuck my best friend because I don't roll that way. Oh,
Yeah.
you have a sister. Done.
Oh,
Or you have a brother.
there you go.
This sounds like one of Fee's books. But yeah, and they do a really good job of kind of setting that up, and you're rewarded for someone who, is a comic book reader to see that. Like you're rewarded to see it
Mhm.
like a softer Sinestro to a certain degree. Seeing him and Hal like have a mutual respect for each other, like that's cool to see too, because Hal does prove himself overall to the Green Lantern Corps. Like Sinestro is one that he really has to prove to. And like you're dropped into like the middle of like everyone kind of knowing each other, but you get enough in this anthology that
Mhm.
hey, Sinestro is not necessarily taking orders from Hal, but respects his opinion. He's like, all right,
Yeah,
Hal, you do this, I got this, I'll do this. Like they're able to bounce off each other, and there's nothing bad there. And then there's so much
I will say.
foreshadowing in that one.
Yeah, as somebody who only like I don't know, secondarily, maybe tertiarily knows Hal as a character, it did feel really weird that he was the one like teaching and like
Yeah.
taking in this rookie. I'm like, that's like the like hotshot pilot who's not gonna like respect the chain of command. Like, why is he the one in charge of the rookie? That was a little confusing to me.
Uh,
But I
yeah.
digress.
Well, at least they do set up that like Arissa's even at the end, like, oh, I can skip boot camp and Kilowog's absolutely not.
No.
No, no, no. I don't care what he teaches you.
Kilowog will
Anything
refuse to
bad he
train.
teaches you, I will
I will
make you
correct.
unlearn. Yeah, you'll unlearn whatever Hal teaches you, and you'll learn the right way from me. Pick up whatever
Yeah.
you want from him, and then I'll teach out whatever bad shit he taught you. Uh,
Speaking of Kilowog, I want
mhm.
to jump into his story
Let's
because,
go, man.
oh my god. So, like,
So good.
last week, Kilowog was obviously my favorite. I adored him. He was great. I loved everything he was giving me. This week was even better.
Hmm.
I think it helped that it was the second story because I didn't realize this until I was like halfway through the first like vignette, but I had completely like spaced out. I had tuned out everything that was happening. And like I got the gist of it. I like focused back in about like halfway through that like first Guardian story.
Hmm.
Anyways, and so, like, right as I'm, like, trying to, like, pull my attention back to the forefront of what's in front of me, immediately Kilowog was on my screen, and I went, "Alright, I'm here.
I'm
I'm
in.
sat. You have me. Like, I'm in." And we get to see Kilowog going through his boot camp, his rookie training with a badass, like, hard-ass drill sergeant. Um and seeing them like learn how to be lanterns without rings and what it
Mm.
means to like persevere and channel your willpower without, a magical component. And then, getting to see Kilowog save the day and the like his first real loss as a lantern,
Mhm.
like losing this mentor figure, and then going on to emulate him and incorporate what he was taught into how he teaches others in a way that's really genuine. Like every time I see Kilowog, like you can feel how much he cares and how much he loves the Lantern Corps and how much he wants to instill everything he knows into the future so that they can be as safe as they can be.
Mhm.
And that's just really beautiful to have this like character who like looks like big and menacing and is like you think he's gonna be like, I hate everything, I'll just take care of everything myself. But really he genuinely loves and cares about this community and what it means to be part of this family basically. I
Yeah.
don't know. I really love him. I think everything about his storyline was great. As somebody who doesn't read the comics, I don't know much about him. And so like everything about that was a good time to me.
I'll just see if there's any like Kilowog specific stories to send you because he's really
Hell yeah.
like
I'll read the
if
shit
you
of the
if you love him like just in these brief instances that you've seen, he's so good in the comic books, and it comes at a loss too. Again, knowing the comic books, and they touch upon little things. So if you know, you're like, does that meme where you see Mr. Incredible and he's all smiling? You're like, but for people who know, they see the dread. He mentions
Yeah.
his wife and kids.
Mm-hmm.
He, something not great happens to
Yeah.
them, but
I would assume. I
yeah,
not every time you mention a family in a superhero property,
hmm
I go, ooh,
yeah, what's
that
gonna happen to
something's
you?
not good gonna happen
But
there.
that's one of Kilowog's strengths. He's still this incredible member of the Green Lantern Corps, still loves the Corps with his whole heart, despite all the tragedies he's faced. He doesn't go down the path that Sinestro does with all his tragedies. Like, he's like, nah, I'm still stick to my guns, man. And to see, yeah, when he meets Deegan and adapts at the very end and starts calling people poozers, that was such a heartbreaking moment to see. And it was like, oh, he's already, like, you can tell how much of a softie he is. Like, he generally
Yeah.
respects this man. They also whooped the shit out of him, not like maybe 2 hours before.
Oh yeah.
That dude was like, take your ring off, stop being a bitch.
Whooped his
He
ass.
beat his ass. It felt like very much like Officer and a Gentleman. You know what I'm talking about? Like, with a
Uh-huh.
whole like training scene with with him, with Richard Gere. Like, now the fun romantic stuff, which is also really cool part of the movie. But like all the Louis Gossett Jr. stuff, he was like, what are you gonna do? You gonna fail out? You're gonna fail out? He's like, no, I'm not gonna fail out. Like, I'm gonna fight. And like, he's trying to stick up for his people, but he realizes, like, this teacher doesn't want to see. It's very, we've seen it in other media, but like, he doesn't want to see his team fail because so many lanterns die. And
Yeah.
he's seen probably so many of these rookies come out, and despite his teachings or anything, they still pass away. So he's just trying to make them as prepared as possible for the world. And even in his last
Like
moments,
this
like
is the
Deacon, yeah,
only way.
yeah,
Yeah, I know how to instill these skills so you have a chance at surviving a couple years,
yeah,
right?
just a
Like
couple, yeah. Like, it's to be an older member of the Corps, he says, like, is a blessing, like, that
yeah.
not a lot of people get.
Uh-huh.
And even the one of the main things that I think retroactively might be very important, for Kilowog's story, is the fact that he, kind of instills in him, like, the second you put the ring on, you're more than what is a lantern. Like, you're not no longer a lantern for your family or for some random person that you love or you care for. Like, you're a lantern for the universe now. Like,
Hmm.
you are above your position. Like, you're above what they think you are. Like, you got to be
Hmm.
better. You got to be, like, more faster, better, stronger. You have to, like, give it your all constantly. Maybe that's what some forces, in America should be like. But I think
Yeah,
maybe they should
I
start reading
think
some Green Lantern. You know.
yeah, the entire concept of like Green Lantern as a story is so fascinating because like depending on who's writing it, it very much can be a necessary like social commentary on like
Mm-hmm.
the state of like global forces.
Mm-hmm.
Um however, it can sometimes just be reduced to, oh yeah, look at these space cops. And that can be fun, and there's a place for
Yeah.
that. And it can be like lighthearted, like it's as serious as you want to make it. But I think there are some like really genuine, like grounded Green Lantern stories. Grounded is very ironic in that sentence.
Yeah.
But where they're like really using that as an opportunity to be a commentary on the world they're observing. And at this point in the world, not to date ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but that's something we need so desperately is being able to be critical
Mm-hmm.
about like global powers and the uses of force and military and technology and what that means as a civilization and what does it mean to be human, just like what does it mean to be a Green Lantern, to represent something bigger than yourself, bigger than your family, than your planet, than your species. Like you are
Mm-hmm.
representing the like the entire universe as a force for good.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring this up, and I did mention Tom King earlier, who's working on the live action, soon to come out HBO Max series. You can't watch this movie on HBO Max, but you can watch that show on HBO Max down the line. Um, Tom,
Until somebody decides to take it off.
yeah, until like James Gunn is like, hey man, I don't want to take it off. Dave Zaslaw's like, fuck you. But Tom King, he gets a lot of flack because he always mentions that he, worked in the CIA and in 2001 to like 2006. And so there's a lot of shady
Uh,
shit that happened, and he can't write about it or talk about it. And a lot of his scripts got to go through the government because he writes a lot about, which is kind of interesting. He writes a lot about what he experienced, overseas,
mhm.
and a lot of the things that maybe he had to do that weren't great. And he frames them in these superhero stories, which are really interesting. He also has some very grounded work like Sheriff of Baghdad, which is almost autobiographical to a certain degree, whatever the government would allow him to
Yeah.
write. But he has a series called the Omega Men, I believe it's called, which stars Kyle Rayner, my favorite Green Lantern. It's a 12 issue series, so it takes place throughout a year where he's behind enemy lines and he questions what it means to be a Green Lantern. Like he's depowered at one point, he's caught off guard. He sees these bad guys he was trying to arrest as maybe they're not the worst people in the world, but like they have a reason for what they're doing, despite us always being like, we're the Green Lantern Corps. We have to do this, we're the right in the universe. We're the thing that you have to look up to. It's like maybe not necessarily that, and like maybe they shouldn't go to a certain extreme. Has a lot of things there, obviously read at your own discretion and pick whatever you get from that reading, is what you get,
Mhm.
because readings can be subjective in that way. But he does frame
Yeah.
his time in the CIA and some of the stuff that he's seen and possibly did, to survive
Mhm.
in this narrative frame of the Green Lantern Corps. And it's interesting to see someone who, for all intents and purposes, if you read Green Lantern again, everyone has their favorite. I do mention Kyle a lot, but he is quote unquote the torchbearer. He's the one who restarted the Green Lantern Corps when, Hal killed most of them, under duress. And he's the one who kept the light going, and he's the one who, became the living embodiment of will as Ion and things like that. So to see him question the morals of the Green Lantern Corps, to see him question the morals of the villains, the quote unquote villains of this story, it doesn't necessarily stick the landing too well. Like there is some stuff that is like very America, it feels like in his writing, but,
Yeah.
and
But yeah, there's going to be a certain level of like nationalism in
yeah,
most writing, especially
exactly.
just because like that's the like environment in which you are in, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't separate some of those themes and aspects from a person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
just is reflected in your storytelling, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting. You can almost always use the Lantern Corps as your like, your I don't know what I'm trying to say, like monocle or like your kind of viewpoint to,
Mhm.
you know, what it could be to be this, moral force in the universe, And it's interesting when you make those stories, but it's also fun when it is just, Lethal Weapon in space. you know,
Mhm.
there is
Yeah,
the flip
absolutely.
side of that, or it was Bad Boys in Space, which that's the most recent movie I watched. That's why in my head I was like, oh, it's like those buddy cop movies are fun. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, if you want to put a critical lens to what it means to be a force, police force, and what the good, the bad that comes with it, can we criticize it? Can we, show what it could be, um, it is interesting when you do something like that. And Green Lanterns do tend a lot with the specific writer. You could do a lot with it, or you could just be weird as shit and show like the first Lantern, which is something next I want to talk about. That story, which you spaced out during, it's fun because it's just weird ass aliens doing weird
Yeah.
ass Green Lantern shit in the very beginning of time. It's so fun.
Mhm.
Just seeing
I thought
like,
it was really
yeah.
interesting. Like again, I did not really pay attention to the first half of it, but seeing I always love seeing the variety of species that we get
Mm-hmm.
within Green Lantern stories, especially being the origin, having some really unique designs compared to what we see in
Yeah.
more more modern parts of this movie. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting that like the story of what it means to be the first lantern,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily the first to get a ring, not necessarily the first to like serve in this role of a protector, but to come up with the idea of what it means and how to channel your willpower, and like being the first to create constructs, and being like really the origin for what we see as a modern lantern. I do want to say that based on the name, I did think it was going to be a more um feminine character for being the first lantern, and I was
Mm.
v- kind of disappointed that it was more masculine. Would have been really cool to see a badass woman, just saying.
Yeah, that
Just saying.
purple glob like creature
Hmm.
seemed like it might be a female in origin. It was
Seemed more feminine.
yes.
Yeah, but was also like kind of like the like nagging, like naysayer, like
Yeah, she did
role,
like
which
constantly
didn't
talk
feel
shit.
great.
Yeah, it felt very
Yeah.
outdated.
Hmm.
But it was cool. I did like the story of like this, describe someone who writes and and his thought is only supposed to be a writer, not supposed to be a
Yeah.
fighter. Then tasked to like, oh hey, you gotta fight, you gotta do this now. And he excels at it. And it's funny that the writer then takes up a sword. The pen is mightier
Yeah.
than the sword
The pen.
to
Yeah.
to then just decimate like the Dominator's force, which is the name of the aliens with the red dot on their head. Um, if you've seen Supergirl, they have been prominent in Supergirl. Um,
True.
they
Love
to
Supergirl.
Yeah, I know. I was like, and it was cool when they introduced them. I was like, oh shit, the Dominators.
Uh-huh.
Um, it was cool to see him like take that arms up and then show how important it is to be the first laner. And he takes a responsibility. And then seeing the lineage of the ring, I thought that was a really cool moment that hit. Like seeing like who that ring when he passed away got passed down to. And then you start realizing like, oh, he's
Oh
from
shit.
Earth,
Yeah.
like he's from Earth sector. Like so then it goes to Admin and eventually to Hal. Like Hal's ring is what the first lantern's ring was. So like it kind of
Feels a
shows.
little bit too important of
Yeah,
a ring to give to Hal, but that's fine.
yeah. But to be fair, it was supposed to go to John first, and then it skipped
Yeah.
over. So it's the ring's fault, honestly. It should have picked better. Um,
I do love John. Again, John is
yeah.
like my touchstone when I think of Green
And
Lanterns.
again, it's easy to make fun of Hal because
Uh-huh.
he's the least interesting member of the Green Lantern Corps, but he's still a Green Lantern, which is fucking awesome. In the
It
context
is.
of things, it's
And he
just when
gives
you look at
some pretty
everybody
cool
else, he's like,
stories.
look at this milk toast motherfucker right here. God damn. Can't
Exactly.
I'd rather deal with the Marine who's an architect and like he has a lot of compassion for life. I'd rather deal with the fucking artist who loves manga and Nine Inch Nails and is very unsure of himself. Let's deal with, the Mexican girl who has PTSD and so she really has to overcome green fear.
Hmm.
Let's deal with the Muslim American who is in post 2001 constantly being targeted and feared upon, and he's like, nah, I can show you that we are good people. You just have, and does shit that no other lantern can do. Or how about let's talk about the white dude with the bowl cut, that is rough around the edges, guy. Yeah, any of those Earth-based lanterns, way more fun to read about than Hal. It's just Hal's there. Hal's there. It's like
Hal,
Barry. I
that's
love
like his
Barry.
tagline. Hal, he's just there.
Yeah, I love Barry, but like obviously I am
Hmm.
a child of the '90s. My Flash is and always will be Wally West. I,
I
you know,
love Wally.
I
Hmm.
love Wally West. I love Wallace West when they changed him for the New 52, and then they brought regular Wally back, and they're both cool with each other. I was like, fuck it. If your name's Wally West, you're the shit. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're a better Flash. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. I don't make the
Hmm.
rules. It's just how it is.
I will say shout out to Bart, who everybody forgets, because they basically took the characterization of him and called him Barry in the TV show,
They did. They
which is
really did.
great.
It's very unfortunate. Yeah, but yeah, they definitely did that. And it doesn't help that you have someone like Ezra Miller playing Barry Allen in live action.
Yeah,
It
we're
is
forgetting about them.
yeah, it is
We're
fixed
ignoring
with the
that.
fact that Grant Gustin did an amazing portrayal as Barry Allen in the TV show. Thank
Hmm.
God for Grant Gustin, because that man is actually a beautiful human being, and he actually embodied Barry as he should. He was a nice man, as he should be. I wanted to move on. I wanted to save my favorite one for last. So I wanted to talk about Lyra's story, and then we could do the wraparound. But I wanted to touch on
Okay.
Bogo last because it's absolutely one of my favorite stories. So
Let's talk about Princess Lyra. Oh my
this
god,
was
I
just like the
adored this
action
one.
state. This was all
Yeah,
action all the time, and she
it
was
was
amazing.
badass. It was so cool. We get to see it set up like so we get to see her like badass current day. And then Hal's like, I'll tell you what's up with her.
Yeah.
And so we get to flashback to her first solo mission, and she's sent to her home planet and has to face her family. Like, first of all, that's like badass storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And then the action throughout the entire sequence was incredible. We see this face off against her, like, I guess stepmom, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, or whatever, and then her interactions with her brother, and then finally going up against her father in the like throne room or whatever. First of all, this planet like kind of destroyed by like all the shit that was going on,
Yeah.
but the like royal palace or whatever the fuck it was gorgeous. It was so
Pristine.
cool. It was pristine. But yeah, no, just like all of the action in this felt so good. It was so fun to watch. Like, all the movements felt really like realistic in a way we
Mm-hmm.
don't usually get to see in like fun space battle, like messing with like physics and like stuff. But I don't know. This is just great. I don't have any other thoughts about this section other than fantastic.
I last week we talked about a TikToker who his name's Omar, who has been he does like some wrestling content only because because he's a wrestling fan and will tie it into comic books, and he's recently been doing a lot of Green Lantern stuff since we've had a lot of announcements for live action stuff. So I took a little inspiration from him, and we did shout him out last week. But I was looking at it, and there really is like it's hard not to see the wrestling moves when you're a wrestling
Mhm.
fan like myself. So the fact that Lyra fighting her stepmom, what did she puts her in a rear naked choke while basically riding her through space into the upper atmosphere, then just straight up into the atmosphere, slices her mask off, and then straight right hand to the bridge of the nose, just boom, just breaks the nose right there, all while following through space, was fucking badass. Her dad's armor,
Ass and
this like
shit.
I
Oh
put
yeah.
Goldar slash Archangel like looking thing was so cool. Her brother was a little whiny bitch. She beat his ass.
Her brother was a little whiny
It really
bitch.
was. Um, and then I put here, I was like, and this is really for the wrestling fans. I was like, God damn, the combo into because it was like a left right combo into triple knee strikes and then a V trigger right to her face, to her dad's face. Insane. Insane. And then I love after everything, after he gets his ass handed to him, and then was like, you know what? I'm gonna kill myself.
Absolutely whooped.
I'm just gonna kill myself
Yeah.
real quick.
I was like, oh shit. I was like interesting the way they were like alluding to like a more like Japanese like honor
Yeah.
code with like their like warriors and the way they had set up this like
Hmm.
universe or whatever. Uh, but like also the whole time you were just like degrading your daughter while she was whooping your fucking ass.
Yeah. It wasn't
And
until
then
you got
once
your ass beat,
you
you're like,
like yeah, you're armorless, powerless. She like could absolutely take you out. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna redeem myself. I'm just gonna kill myself, and you're gonna, you'll take over. You'll be great. Like it's all up to
mhm.
you now. What a fucking jerk! Like
Yeah.
he said, "This is actually not my problem anymore. I'm gonna make all of my mess your problem. Good
Yep.
luck. Bye bye."
Here's the living embodiment of generational trauma. Here it is.
Real.
Yeah. But like I said, I put my notes here like you could have figured this out before you tried whooping your daughter's ass, sir. Like they because I put tried because he tried, he lost.
Tried big time.
Yeah, and he could have just turned around. He was like, "Damn, you whooped my ass that bad. You know what? You are right." And which he did, and he's like,
Mhm.
"But on the same side, I'm gonna kill myself. I don't have to deal with this shit
Yeah.
anymore." It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why did you do? Why?
Like, you
Why
can
fight
fix
me
my
in
problems.
general? Yeah, what the fuck? Now you just gave me trauma
Yeah.
on top of the other
Uh-huh.
trauma that I have. Like,
Yeah.
this is
We got
ridiculous.
triple trauma. We got
Yeah.
layers.
Hey,
It's
fix
like
my
an onion.
mistakes. What the fuck is wrong with you? Fix your own mistakes. I have shit. I have a job now.
I have a real job that does not involve being here.
Yeah, what
Like,
the fuck? It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? But like, I also love that Kelly Who voice, uh, Lyra. Sorry, it took me a while. I lost some
mhm.
space, but Kelly Who always just fucking amazing in everything she's in. She's
Wonderful.
Karai and
Yeah,
Ninja
it was
Turtles
great.
and all this stuff. So yeah, she's amazing. So when I heard her voice, I was like, "Ooh, Kelly Who's in this? Let's go." Um, but yeah, it was just badass. She was just a fucking beast, and that was one of my favorite sections of the whole thing. Um, Before we get to my favorite again, let's talk about the wraparound. What did you think of the overall story? Just, I mean, obviously it was just there just to kind of
Mhm.
tie everything together, but Krona and this overall overarching like bad guy they had to deal with. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was like a pretty good scale on like the terms of where they are in the universe. It was
Hmm.
not like super galactic world ending or galactic ending threat. It was just like this is a threat to the Lantern Corps and everything we know. And like our like base planet, our home, our history, like this is just coming for us.
Hmm.
So what can we do to prevent that and to continue our like history and our culture? And it was like just big enough where it felt important and impactful, but not too big where it felt a little bit ridiculous or world breaking. Again, my problems with how big the mentor aside, I thought it was really interesting. I think the stories they pulled on were perfect to set up the end solution where she was like, okay, I've taken all the things I've learned, all these different themes, and how am I going to apply them in a really interesting way. I loved that she got to be the hero, that
Yeah.
she got to have her moment. They executed her idea, it worked almost like pretty much flawlessly, and then they get to kind of have a happily ever after where she obviously, has to go through Kilowog's boot camp now.
Yeah, I did love though it is a big threat like you mentioned, it is not, as well as you mentioned, like not the biggest threat in the universe. Like it will be if not checked, but that's what the Green Lantern
Mhm.
Corps is, right? They're there to check these things
Exactly.
and balances. And I love that it's important enough that we set up the scale how big Corona is, the importance of the Green Lantern Corps, but at the same time, it just feels like a Wednesday for the Green Lantern. Like this feels like an
Yeah.
issue, like a couple issues you read, like shit, I wonder how they're gonna get out of this. Oh, cool, they got out of it. This is a story
Mhm.
Hal goes back to Earth and he's chilling at the Justice League Watchtower and talking like, oh, what'd you do last week? He's like, oh, I fought this motherfucker in space, like he came out of a fucking sun from another universe, and oh, we got this recruit. She's really cool. She did a really good job. She had some plan. Sinestro of all people fucking jumped in and was like, "Yeah, no, let's follow her." And I was like, "That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Good thing I came up with it." All this shit.
Mhm.
And him just bullshit with a barrier or some shit. It just feels like a normal day for the Green Lanterns, but that doesn't take away from the fact that like it is very important what they're dealing with. It just it's an overall big threat. Like but it was nice. It was nice, and it did do the thing that like it did overshadow the other stories. Um, you're right. The resolution, the fact that Arissa learned from everything that how Sinestro and Lyra taught her, and pulled from that, and they have full confidence in her. I thought that was really cool. This rookie, it's not like a boy girl. It's literally she's a rookie, and a teenager
Yeah.
at that, and
Like
they
her
were
first
like
day on the job.
they're
No
like, yeah,
training.
sure,
She's
this
just here.
child has a good idea. Let's go with it. Fuck
Mhm.
it. Well, anybody else got a better idea? No, fuck it. Let's throw a
No,
planet
all
at him.
right.
Fuck it, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good. This was fucking smart. I didn't think about it. I think you're gonna ace that physics test next week when you go back to your planet.
Right.
I think you're gonna do a good job. Um, I did love that. There was just a line because she was like knowing enough of how little she's been at the core, be like, "Is this the blackest night?" Which is a prophecy foretold in the Book of
Yeah.
Oa. Um, and Sinestro from Jump, he's like, "Nah, this is just dusk." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this like say it shows you the scale,
Yeah.
like what it is." And I put in my
Exactly.
notes of
It was
like,
perfectly scaled.
I was like, "This is not the blackest night, Orisa. Not till the zombies come." Like that's the blackest night. Um, but yeah, I thought overall as a wraparound, I think it did its job really well. I think it did really
Yeah.
good. Um,
I think the most important thing, like you said, it doesn't overshadow
no.
any of the stories being told. It perfectly frames them and draws them in and makes them mean something. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why these are the 5 they chose to represent, like, what does it mean to be a Green Lantern? And I think they execute that really well.
Yeah, yeah. So finally, and we did this out of order because I wanted to touch upon this at the end.
Yeah.
We talk about Mogo, one of my favorite Green
Hmm.
Lanterns. Um,
I
yeah.
instantly knew. I was like, I don't know anything about Mogo, but I was like, this feels right up Carlos's alley. I was like, I
Hmm.
can't wait to hear all about what this means because I
Yeah.
certainly do not know.
Yeah. So Mogo, for anyone who doesn't know and hasn't seen this movie, watch it. It's pretty good. But
This movie,
Mogo,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, Mogo is a living planet that is a Green Lantern. There is a couple weird as fuck Green Lanterns. He's one of them. There's a biological virus that is one that goes like up your nose.
Mm-hmm.
It just fucks with you and gives you like a cold and shit. There's a math equation that is a Green Lantern. We've seen a couple mosquitoes. Or like Bizzed is one. Yeah, you saw him in this movie for a brief second. He's like a big motherfucking
The
mosquito looking motherfucker. Or
was
he's
it
like a
Chip
bee. Chip,
or
yeah,
whatever
Chip is another one, the
the
squirrel looking dude. They
mm-hmm.
mentioned him at the end, which I thought was
the
funny.
Chip.
Obviously, Kilowog looks like a giant motherfucking metal pig. Like he's big as shit.
I love him.
Um, and I love that they make fun of each other. Like it feels very like
Hmm.
having my best friend and brother, be a Marine, and knowing how horribly they speak of each other. The Green Lantern Corps very like caught it very well. Like the fact they called Tomar Ray fish
Yeah.
face and like all this other shit. I'm like, you guys are assholes, but like you guys are family at the same time. You guys are
Yeah.
just dicks
Yeah.
to each other. But yeah, Mogo's story is an adaptation, as I mentioned before, of Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' story from the Tales of Green Lantern. And when I was getting back into comic books a few years back, this was post or right before Green Lantern Rebirth, which is the story that Jeff Johns brought Hal Jordan back to life in I think 2003, 2004. I was like sophomore in high school. Don't. Oh, I know you were a baby. I get it. You were like 4. I understand.
I was gonna say about 5, yeah,
Okay. Well,
kindergarten.
thanks. Yeah. All right. Fucking daughters in kindergarten right now. God damn it. All right. But I would go. I want to shout out Ontario Street Comics in Philadelphia. If you've watched Unbreakable, the movie starring Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson, portion of that movie is filmed there. Uh, so it's really cool. That is my comic book shop of choice, though, in the
Oh,
Philadelphia
shouting out! Shout out to Outsider Comics and is it Fremont, Wallingford? I don't know, somewhere over the river.
area. So it's like above Seattle.
Well, no, because
Oh,
like
Fremont is like a
it depends
town.
on what you call Seattle. Because like there's like Seattle, and then there's like Seattle, and then there's like Greater Seattle area.
Mm,
Anyway, it's this whole thing. I would consider everything like if I have to cross water to get there, it's like outside of like the core Seattle.
fair.
However, it's still very much within the city of Seattle, which is this whole
Gotcha.
thing. If people here have really strong opinions on what neighborhoods are like actually neighborhoods and what neighborhoods are cities. It's the whole thing.
I love that that's universal across like the United States because in Philly there's a couple and we're like you'll hear of like a shooting, and it's like it depends if the news wants to call it Kensington. And it's like, nah, that's like right across the street from me. Like that's not really Kensington. If you go like 5 more blocks, that's Kensington. But nah, I'm in Port Richmond. It's still bad. Don't get me wrong, but don't lump us in with them. It's not that bad. Um, or North Philly, South Philly, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
They
um,
tried to rename my neighborhood, and everybody universally was
it's
like,
so
"Nah, we're not
stupid.
calling it that."
No, no. Listen, if it's named something, as long as it's not culturally insensitive, there's no
Right.
reason to change it. It is what it is. Stop trying to change shit, you fucking hippies, fucking
Mhm.
yuppies. But yeah, when I was getting back into reading comic books, I was already again a Green Lantern fan. I was kind of up to date with Kyle Rayner stuff at that point. Jim Lee was drawing him, at least at the time. This is before he became really like an integral part of DC Comics. Like he was like full, before he was president and shit. Um, they're about to relaunch Green Lantern. Launch it happens. Very successful, really good series. I highly recommend Green Lantern Rebirth. Um, Reestablished Green Lantern Corps and stuff. And I'm like, I want to read more Green Lantern stuff. So I hit up, Ontario Street Comics on one of my days off of school, and I, talk to the guys, and they point me in this direction. The Tales of Green Lantern like stories, this like collection. Pick it up, and obviously I see Alan Moore's name. I'm like, the dude who wrote Watchmen. Of course, I'm gonna read this. And he, of course, because he's
Right.
weird as fuck, writes all these weird as fuck stories, and this is one of them, and it's one of my favorites. Of this fucking bounty hunter who's like, I fight only the strongest people in the world because I'm the strongest in every world. So I hunt
Mhm.
down other strong people, and he hears from one of his last victims of Mogo, the most fearsome fighter in the universe, and the fearsome warrior, and he happens to be a Green Lantern. And he goes, I've never heard of a Green Lantern being like the most fearsome dude in the universe. Like, what are you talking about? So he gets info, tracks down Mogo, and lands on his planet. I love that it's like a megaphone, this shitty looking megaphone he pulls out of nowhere. Calls out Mogo, and then tries to track him down. And as Hal mentions in this, and it's mentioned in the Tales of the Green Lantern, um, you know, hours turn to days, days turn to weeks. In the book, it does become weeks turn to months, months turn to years. So in the story, he's there for a couple years, literally going
Mhm.
insane little by little. Because
Yeah.
Mogo has no
Sounds
concept
about
of
right.
time, right? He's a fucking planet. Like,
Mhm.
who cares?
Yeah.
Also, I think
He's just
Mogo might be
floating
a
around
girl.
the.
I forget.
Oh,
I think Mogo might have got
for them.
retconned as Mogo's actually a girl. Like, wait, what?
All right, cool.
Yeah. Um, but he literally starts going insane, starts questioning everything around him. In this, he sends some probes out, and when he gets a scan of the universe in the comics, he draws, like he maps out literally like on paper the universe, like the planet. When he looks finally one day, he's just going fucking crazy. He looks at the map, and there's a giant Green Lantern symbol in the drawing, and he has a mental breakdown and flees the planet
Hell yeah.
because he's so fucking afraid of this. And it works a little, I would say the comic does work a little better because they do add the layer
Mhm.
of like, it hasn't been just months, like he's there for years. He literally maps out the planet, and he's got like a beard, he looks like disheveled, he's literally going crazy. And when he looks at the paper and realizes there's a Green Lantern symbol, he's like, oh fuck, this is the Green Lantern, the whole planet. And you're introduced to Mogo, and it's one of my favorite character introductions in comic books. And this dude just Mogo defeats him by literally doing nothing in the comic books. In this, he's a
Mhm.
little more active. I also love that the concept of Mogo. So this guy is on here for a couple months, and Mogo's feeding him. Like,
Mhm.
he's making
Yeah.
sure he gets food. He can take away the food at any point. He's like, no, no, here's some berries. This will keep you up.
Yeah.
Here's some fresh
You'll
water.
you'll survive. It won't be
Yeah,
great for you, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to deal with your corpse on my body.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, poor Mogo's dealt with worse. John Stewart, you know what you did on Mogo's body. Nasty. um, if you're a comic book reader, you know. Um, But I absolutely love the story, and I just love that, like, he's like, "Oh, he's not really sociable, he doesn't really hang out with us too much." I was like, "Yeah, because he's a fucking planet, and he's just big as shit. He could be like,
I
he
feel
could
like that's a you problem. Like you should
yeah,
go
go over
visit.
there,
Like
yeah. Yeah, go over there. What the fuck are you doing?" Well, at the end of this movie, of course, we get, like, the new home of Oa temporarily is Mogo, which
yeah.
happens a lot in the comics, actually, so it was a cool little nod
Very
to that,
nicely
but
done. Yeah.
I love this story. I just love this is like Mogo is a great concept to show you how fucking weird Green Lantern can be and how awesome Green Lantern can be as a story. And it's really well done in this adaptation. I was really happy when they started mentioning the story. I was like, oh, I forgot that was adapted for this. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I love this part so fucking much. What are your thoughts on the Mogo piece?
I think it's great. I think the way it tied into the overarching narrative was really brilliant. Like we get to see this. I love Green Lantern stories where they play with the idea of like concepts inhabiting like the Green Lantern like spirit or whatever. I
Mm,
always think that you can tell a really interesting story there. And like yeah, most of the time it's like kind of played off for laughs, but it's so fascinating to think of like what is consciousness and what does it mean to have like will.
mhm.
And that's something you can really easily play around with in these spaces. So getting to see this really cool w- it really felt like a really solid established story. Um just from how they adapted it, and obviously they simplified it a little bit. It's Hal's retelling of what
Yeah, yeah.
actually happened. This is how I like to think about it. But you could tell the source material was really solid,
Mhm.
and so I think that really played into how enjoyable it was. But yeah, overall one of the stronger like
Yeah.
conceptual stories in
and
this.
and then thinking comic book wise, right? Again, we have Green Lantern Corps. We have some similar Green Lanterns, but they're very humanoid in status, right? At the
Yeah, for the
time when
most
this
part,
is
yeah.
writing, and it wasn't. Of course, you have someone who's so brilliant and twisted as
Stop
Alan Moore.
making all of our alien species humanoid. You know
Yeah.
how rare it would be for all of them to evolve like semi like us? No,
No.
make
Yeah.
weird funky aliens.
Yes. Yes. Make it normal that you go to the planet and it's just like lizard people. You know,
You know, whatever the fuck you
Of
want.
course, yeah, and then you get a fucking conscious planet, and like I think it really was like Alan Moore coming, like jumping into these tales, to because he's like a beautiful disaster of a genius, right? Right, especially when it comes to his
Yeah.
writing, that like he comes in, he's like, no, this is stale. Like, why do something like this? And then everyone else is like, fuck yeah, we're in space, right? Of course. I'll make a fucking bee. Like yeah, it's weird, but it could be work. Like let's keep
Mhm.
no. It's almost like that Key and Peele skit where they kind of mock. It actually happens in Gremlins 2, where like there's no bad ideas. Tell me what you want. Throw it at the wall. Who cares? It's like how about a bee? Sure, that's a new Green Lantern. Done. What about
No.
this? Like it's done.
Mhm.
Sure. Yep. Done. And I think it felt obviously there probably was something probably before it, but as a reader, as someone who came into Green Lantern later into the lore, it feels like Alan Moore was that breath of fresh air. That was like, we don't have to tell normal stories. Let's get weird with the constructs. Let's get weird with everything else. It's space. Space has to be weird. There's no way it has to be like normal, Like
Yeah.
there's no way.
Mhm.
Um well, that is the movie. Any final thoughts before we move on to drama class? I have one final thing I forgot to mention in our killer walk part, but I want you to go first if you
Give
have
your
anything.
final thought and then I'll do the transition.
Oh, okay. So I forgot to mention in Kilowog's part when
Hmm.
Deegan passes away.
Hmm.
It's not
Oh, the blood.
yeah, because it's not overtly
Yeah.
stated when you're a rookie Green Lantern, you don't get your symbol. It's just a
Uh-huh.
blank symbol. Like you can customize your costume or whatever, but it's usually just a blank circle until you earn your stripes, and then that's when you get the Green Lantern
Hmm.
symbol on your costume or your uniform in this sense because they're cops. So Kilowog has nothing there, and then
Hmm.
he saves everyone and tries to help Deegan and take out the Kandarians, and there's no way this is not disgusting. Doesn't matter what alien race you are, this has to be the grossest thing ever. And Deegan uses his own blood because it's green to draw the Green Lantern symbol on Kilowog's fucking chest. And
It was a
God,
very beautiful, touching moment, but
yeah,
also kind of gritty.
absolutely. Because my only thought process is like the second that everyone walks away from Kilowog, he's just gonna like gag and like wash it off. Like, like you have to, because that's the grossest. Because there's no little like thin green light barrier in between protecting. No, no, no. It's straight on his chest, and like that.
Yeah.
Thank God that's a thick costume, because if I would feel someone else's blood on my clothes, and they did that shit on purpose, no, I'd be having a fucking. I'd quit the Green Lantern Corps right there. Okay, your final thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to honorable mention one of the lines in this movie before we jump into drama class was during the Evan Sir backstory section. They say we wear destiny on our fingers, and like, damn, is that not a great line?
That's a
That
hard
was
ass
brilliant.
line. That's a hard ass
That
line.
yeah, that one hit me right in
That
the field.
so that's good Jeff Johns. That's what you get when you read. You're like, oh shit, Jeff Johns, really good writer. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
he is kind of a douchebag. What? Don't worry about it. That's later
yeah.
on.
hmm
All right, moving on to drama class, one of my favorite sections within DC graduates. Again, a holdover from MC University. We have three little scenes here. So where do you want to start? You want to start with Deegan? You want to start with Arisa's, which we
Start with the
mentioned before?
second one because we already mentioned
Yeah.
it.
Uh, I'll be Arisa. You want to be Sinestro? Yes. I didn't hear you. That's why. Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Perfect. Yeah, go
I
for
just picked you up ever so slightly. I was like, what? All right.
it.
I guess this is the blackest night everyone talks about.
No, my dear. Only dusk.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. That's so good. That's
Not
so hard.
quite,
Yeah. It's
brightest
not
day,
zombie
darkest.
bad. It's not zombie bad. It is, but we're close. It's almost there. This
Yeah,
is the level. It's the
not
threat
great.
level. You know.
hmm We have to fight a sun and some demons, but like it's fine.
Next we'll do Deegan's. I'll do Deegan's because for the last
hmm
one, I want you to be Kilowog because I know how much you love
Okay,
Kilowog.
perfect.
Um, so this is Deegan's line during Kilowog's recruitment and stuff. We die so innocents don't. It's as simple as that. When you put the ring on, the life you lead stops being your own. Beautiful,
Hell yeah.
beautiful line. And then
So good.
finally, we got the ending of the movie. I'll
What
be
a killer way to end.
yeah,
First of all.
yeah. This is it's very fun. It's a very tongue in cheek, but at the same time, very like,
hmm
hey man, you did good. Um,
hmm
so I'll be Sinestro and Arissa, and you can be Kilowog. It appears you fulfilled your prophecy of Oa's. Hold on. It appears you fulfilled the prophecy of Oa's destruction. Not only a hero, but some might say an agent of destiny.
You did good out there, rookie.
Does this mean I get to skip boot camp?
Not a chance, Poozer.
Shout out to
Which
Henry
I
Rollins. He
love.
does a good job.
Yeah. I love that they made me like not feel gross about Poozer in this one cuz it's like, very reminiscent of like the whole calling people maggots cuz you can't call them what you want to call them,
Oh,
whatever. So
yeah.
it feels like really like kind of
Yeah.
gross. But in this they made it like so affectionate that I was like, "All
Mm-hmm.
right, you won me over."
Yeah. It's a side. If he calls you a poozer, he likes you. It's
Yeah.
like where you get like that Nana who like, if Nana doesn't smack you, that doesn't mean she loves you. I'm like, that actually happened to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how they show affection.
Yes, they do, and it hurts when they're drunk.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
from experience. Funny. This is not so much a quiz. I'm not quizzing you on anything. There's no points to
Mhm.
be had here, but I want to know because this happens a lot in sci-fi movies. We get into Guardians of the Galaxy and things like that. These universal translators. So the Green Lantern Corps, they mentioned it before. It's
Mhm.
like the ring translates everything. I
Yeah.
love that. So what Hal is hearing is what would be the equivalent of the words green, the words lantern,
Mhm.
poozer, I guess, is a word. It
Mhm.
must be universal in some way, shape, or form. But like all these words in their different dialects are somehow translated over. One thing I wanted to touch upon is not a story that's mentioned here, but another Alan Moore story from the Tales of the Green Lantern Corps. There is a story of, I forget who the Lantern is at the time, but it was like John's love interest. She goes out on a recruitment drive. This is before the rings would just automatically pick their next user, and she goes to the depths of like outer space in this very dark place, right? And it's a planet that has no sun, anything, like it's pitch black everywhere. So she's the
Mhm.
only light basically, and she finds someone that the ring is kind of detecting should be like a Green Lantern, and she does her little
Mhm.
spiel like, "Hey, my name is this. We would like you to join the Green Lantern Corps. You have the ability to overcome great fear," but she's at an impasse because the translator can't translate the words green and lantern. This
Mm.
alien has
Mhm. Yeah.
no
No
concept of those
concept.
words because there is no light and there's no color
Mhm.
for him. So
Mhm.
he has no eyes, so he has no idea what the fuck that you're talking about. Like there is no
Mhm.
way in his alien language to concept that. And that's something that Alan Moore set up that like, hey, of course these are alien translators and they hear basically what we hear, like for those equivalents of those words and translates it to us, or like as Hal's talking to Kilowog is doing it for Kilowog. So what
Mhm.
he hears, whatever he those words are in his language. But this guy has nothing there, so she is able to recruit him successfully. But he's technically not a Green Lantern Corps member because he has not those words. So he becomes it's I forget, it's like the ring bell or something like that because everything's sound based. So his symbol is a ring
Yeah.
on his chest, and his name's Rop Lop Fan. Uh, and he's just one of the coolest Green Lanterns. I just want it's a fun little trivia thing that they of course a universal translator unless you can't come up with a word for that in their language. So that's something I just want to touch on before we end
That's
this episode.
awesome.
All right, so
Yeah.
final
It'd be so
thoughts.
cool if
Oh yeah.
I love language things. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm just like thinking of a story where like they have to all take off their rings to like try to learn each other's languages.
Oh my
That would be
god,
cool.
I bet you there's an AO3 for that. There has to be.
There probably is. I'll find that later.
I'm trying to think too because he also briefly I think Cop Matui is the one who gets him. That was one of what's her name's sorry, what it was John's conquest, his romantic conquest in the world. But yes, I'm sorry, he's technically not a Green Lantern. He is a F sharp bell lantern. And that's what it looks like. So
That's a good note.
yes, and he has a different oath as well. So it's in loudest din or hush profound. My ears catch evil's slightest sound. Let those who toll out evil's kneel. Beware my power, the F sharp bell. So
That's incredible.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Alan Moore being fucking Alan Moore and just being an absolute fucking genius and weirdo at the same time. Who would have thought? Sly, any final thoughts on Green Lantern Emerald Knights?
This was excellent. This was a great time. It makes me want to go read Green Lantern, which is not something I've really been interested in before. So I'm really excited to bug you for recommendations
I got
of
you.
some fun little stories. But yeah, no, I had a great time with this. I highly recommend watching this movie. I think, like we mentioned before, it's a great example of how to do an anthology well. In what like interconnected way. We'll have some anthologies throughout the show, at least one where I don't believe they tried to interconnect them at all. They're just like shorts that they put together,
Yeah.
which is fine. Um, but yeah, I had a great time with this movie, and yeah, it was just really fun. Like you said, this is probably a short episode because we don't have anything else to say
Yeah.
other than we had a good time.
Exactly. Yeah. I have to agree. 10 out of 10. No notes from me. This this does the job that you want from other multimedia projects, right? When the main basis of it is like something else. So like let's say video games, right? We have The Last of Us being the thing. The idea behind the HBO show is there might be someone out there who doesn't play video games who now wants to play video games because of The Last of Us or Tomb Raider or anything like that. Those properties that
Mhm.
get adapted, as long as the adaptation is really well done, hopefully the idea is, hey, they pick up a PlayStation, they pick up an Xbox, and they play those games, or a PC, to play whatever titles on the way they can. So when you have live action movies and animated movies, the idea, right, is to go back to comic books. That's the source material. That's the main thing. It works very well for anime. You watch an anime like I am, and me, Fee, and Frank are currently with Dan to Dan.
Mhm.
What are we doing? We're immediately at the end of the episode like, well, I should read ahead because they're like, like maybe a year into the project. I'll catch up to the
Uh-huh.
manga. So that's the idea with a lot of American multimedia, right? You watch this and
Mhm.
the idea is what you have. You should watch,
Yeah.
you want to read a Green Lantern comic book. This does that job better than Ryan Reynolds movie ever did. Which is a damn shame. And they came out obviously around the same time. This is like a promotion material for it, and I think it's a better Green Lantern story, unfortunately, than what we got in Ryan Reynolds movies. Again, I don't blame him. I don't blame DC.
Yeah.
I don't blame Blake Lively. That cast was stellar. It's just they just got a shitty movie,
Sometimes
and
things just flop.
exactly. And then you have his Canadian actual friend in real life, Nathan Fillion, coming in and being like, "Hey, I'm gonna be Hal Jordan in this Green Lantern property, and I'm gonna knock it out the park."
Yeah. Oof.
So it's interesting to see too. And you have people who worked on the movie work on this, and it's still better. So it's sad to
True.
see, but this movie is absolutely better. I would highly recommend go and see this, and then yeah, you know, check out some Green Lantern comic books. Check. There's again so many Earth-based lanterns, not to mention all the alien ones out there. So there's plenty of material
Mhm.
if you like. Hal's okay. Yeah, Hal has some really good stories. Don't get me wrong, Sinestro Corps War and Brightest Day and all that junk, but like Kyle, John, Guy, Sojourn, who just got introduced.
Mhm.
There's a Teen Lantern. God, Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz. These all are amazing stories. So yeah, check them out. So that is it for the episode. But you have some homework to do, ladies and gentlemen, and my non-binary folk out there. You have to watch Superman Doomsday, the very first directed DVD movie for this new DC animation project that was launched all those years ago. So this is the ship that launched 1,000 ships. No, that's not how that goes.
Whatever
Something
that
like that.
phrase is. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
so until next time, class is dismissed.